Assalamu alaikum. Hello viewers, hope you are doing well and enjoying your life. I welcome you all to the channel of English with MW. So viewers, in part 1 we have discussed what is sentence, what are the main points to remember about sentence and what the sentence consists of, what is subject and what is predicate. Then in part 2 we have discussed types of the sentences, what are declarative sentences, what are interrogative sentences and what are imperative sentences and what are exclamatory sentences and what are optative sentences. So now in part 3 of the sentences we will discussing the subtype of all these sentences. Now the grammarian have written in their book that they are the declarative sentences, which is basically assertive sentences or statement sentences. So grammarians say that there are two types of that of the declarative sentences. Now the first one is that of the positive sentences, which is also called as that of the affirmative sentences. Now remember that positive sentences are those sentences in which there is no negation. Negation means that not is not involved in this type of the sentences. So that sentences in which there is no negation or no not is involved in these sentences, we call them as positive sentences, or they are also called affirmative sentences. For example, I have written I am going today. So these types of the sentences are basically called positive sentences or affirmative sentences. And the second type of the declarative sentence is negative sentences. Now negative sentences are those type of the sentences in which there is negation, not is involved in this type of the sentences. So that type of the sentences in which there is negation or not is involved, we call them negative sentences. For example, I have written the board I am not going today. So the grammarian says that there are basically two types of declarative sentences. What is positive sentences, which is also called affirmative sentences. Another is called negative sentences. So we are done with that. Now we will discussing about what are the types of the interrogative sentences. The grammarian have written in their book that there are just four types of the interrogative sentences. Number first is confirmatory sentences. Number second is informatory sentences. Number third is alternative interrogatives. And number fourth is take question. So all these sentences or the subtypes of the interrogative sentences, now we will be studying one by one in detail. We will be discussing the subtypes of the interrogative sentences. Now the first subtype of the interrogative sentences is confirmatory sentences. Confirmatory sentences are those sentences which requires a yes-no answer. Remember that the grammarian have called them confirmatory sentences or confirmatory question, while the non-native speaker or the non-native writer called them as yes-no question. So they are basically called yes-no question, while the grammarian call it confirmatory sentences. So remember that we will use the terminology of the grammarian. We will call them confirmatory sentences. We will not call them yes-no question. Remember that confirmatory sentences usually start with the helping verb. So remember that point. Now, for example, are you going home? They just required just a confirmation. So that's why we call this confirmatory sentences. Number second is informative sentences. Now the informative sentences, and they are those questions which are asked using one of the WH words like what, how, where. For example, where are you going? So the informative sentences, the grammarian call is the informative sentences, while the non-native speaker call them as WH question. So remember that. One point to remember that the informative sentences always start with the WH question or WH words. So where are you going? So up till now we have discussed two types of the sentences, confirmatory sentences and informative sentences. Now we will discussing what are alternative interrogative and what are take questions. We will discussing the third type of the interrogative sentences, which is alternative interrogative. Now these are those questions that give a choice among the two or more answer. So when a choice or option is giving among two or more answer, we call this type of the question is alternative interrogatives. That's why the grammarian also call them optional question. They are also called as optional question. Optional or choice questions. So those questions that gives a choice among the two or more answers are basically called alternative interrogatives, optional, or choice question. For example, do you prefer coffee or tea? So this is choice between coffee or tea. So that's why we call them as alternative interrogatives, optional, or the choice question. Now we will discussing about the fourth subtype of the interrogative, which is take question. We will discussing the fourth subtype of the interrogative sentences, which is take question. Now take question or the question takes are the short question at the end of the statement. For example, aren't they, isn't she? So all these type of the short question which are put at the end of the sentence or the statement, we call them question tags or take questions. Now remember that question tags are mainly used in the speech. So this main points to remember about question tag, that they are basically used in the speech. Now what is the purpose of the question tag? So question tag basically confirm that something is true or not. Now we will be discussing about how question tags are formed, or the question tag formation. Now when we use the contraction of the auxiliary verb with the note, then the question tags are formed. For example, I'm showing to you in are. Are is basically a helping verb. Are, has. All these are auxiliary verb. So when we use the contraction of auxiliary verb with the note, which I have written, the contraction of auxiliary verb with the note, then question tags are formed. We will discussing the main 2 points to remember about question tag. So remember that I have written the word a positive statement is followed by a negative question tag, while in the second point to remember that a negative statement is followed by a positive question tag. For example, the first, he has fever. Now we have discussed in the subtypes of the declarative sentences that sentences in which there is no negation, we call them a positive statement. So basically this is a positive statement. He has a fever because there is no negation involved in this statement. So when the positive statement came, it may be and it will be followed by a negative question tag. So hasn't he? In a similar way, when the statement in which there is a negation, we call it as a negative statement. So Rizwan is not sleeping. This is basically a negative question tag. This is basically a negative statement, and the negative statement may be followed or should be followed by the positive question tag. So hope you guys understand the two main points of the question tag, that a positive statement is followed by a negative question tag and a negative statement is followed by a positive question tag. Viewers, we are all done with the sentence. In the part 1, we have discussed what is sentence, what are the part of the sentence, what is subject, what is predicate. In the part 2, we have discussed what are the types of the sentences. We have discussed every type of the sentence in detail, and now in this video we have discussed what are the subtype of the sentences. We have discussed the subtype of declarative sentences, that what is positive or affirmative sentences or what is negative sentences, and then we have discussed in a very comprehensive manner the subtypes of the interrogative sentences, what are the confirmatory sentences or what are the informatory sentences, what are the alternative interrogative sentences, and what are the take question. So we are all done with that of the subtypes or that of the sentences, and we have covered all the aspect of the sentences in all these 3 videos. So like and subscribe this channel, share this video with your friends. Thank you very much.